Howdy folks, Jamboree here. In the last Puppet Panic, I talked about the terrible Matthew Broderick Inspector Gadget movie, a very big dud in the history of cartoon to live action filmmaking. This episode, I'm going to be tackling its divisive sequel. Inspector Gadget is currently suffering from frequent glitches, which are getting in the way of his cop work. At the same time, a brand new gadget has been invented, G2, a robot who is better than our hero in every way. Meanwhile, Dr. Claw has escaped from jail and plans to put together a time freeze machine so that he can steal a load of gold without anyone getting in his way. However, Gadget's niece Penny and her dog Brain are cluing in on Claw's scheme. So I did have high expectations going into this film, but I also had my reservations. It was this weird mixture of intrigue and dread. Some people have called Inspector Gadget 2 a step up from the Broderick disaster, but critics also totally annihilated it. After watching the movie myself, I don't really get the low ratings, especially IMDb's 3 out of 10. Bloody drama queen users. Is it some kind of masterpiece? Hell no! Did the first Inspector Gadget movie set the bar very, very low? Yeah, it did. But I do think that this is an enjoyable straight-to-video sequel that was clearly made by people who listened to the criticism against movie 1 and actually made a product that was much closer to the original cartoon spirit. Heck, this movie deserved a theatrical release way more than Broderick's did. First of all, comedy actor French Stewart is a much more fitting casting for the lead role. Stewart's trademark quirky delivery goes hand in hand with Inspector Gadget's cartoony caricature of 1950s film noir detectives.
You know what that means, Brain? Evil's afoot.
Gadget is meant to be annoyingly incompetent, but also charmingly naive, and French's goofy charisma, plus knack for comedy principles, result in an Inspector Gadget that's idiotic yet adorable.
Well, I'm just making your favorite dessert.
Apple crumb cake with raisin, cinnamon icing, and coconut sprinkles?
Okay, I'm making your second favorite dessert.
Even when scenes call for a more nuanced type of acting, Stewart shows that he has dramatic chops, and can bring pathos to the moment.
Well, I hate to see a good detective get recycled. And I've always had great admiration for your investigative abilities and
which honestly surprised me, because I'm so used to French playing the hammy comic relief.
Well, that might be good for ABC, but that's not who we are. We're about quality.
This sequel also gives Penny and Brain, who were the real heroes of the original cartoon, a lot more to do. Penny gets to actually play detective this time, snooping about and collecting clues, while Brain acts as a supportive loyal dog, and becomes very useful when he's granted speech technology.
Penny has been kidnapped by Claw.
amazing, isn't it? What modern technology can do.
There's some terrific chemistry between this Gadget and this Penny too. The film really rolls with Gadget being this sweet, loving, protective uncle, and you can tell that Penny wants to be just like the inspector who raised her.
This smells like Claw.
No. Why would Claw want me there?
I don't know. Uncle Gadget, this might be a trap.
The movie even finds some effective character building in this relationship because Gadget's overprotectiveness clashes with Penny's need to feel respected as a young talent, something that kids will find very relatable because they're so used to adults telling them, no, you can't do that yet. Throughout the Claw case, Gadget comes to trust his niece's abilities.
Penny was right. I should have listened to her.
While Penny gets to learn about the dangerous side of her uncle's job firsthand, so that she can see why Gadget has been so cautious.
In fact, the jig is just starting. You want me to play dentist?
What I also like about this sequel is that it isn't just trying to rehash the Broderick movie, like so many straight-to-video films lazily tend to do. It feels like this is a story that's moving things forward, with new challenges being presented, like Gadget is suffering from frequent glitches this time, which forces him to face the existential crisis of being outdated.
You're the prototype Gadget. There's bound to be a few glitches.
And it doesn't help that he ends up getting fired thanks to one of Claw's toys. Being Inspector has been his forever dream, begging the question if he can do anything else. Of course, this leads to the cliche trying different jobs comedy montage. But to be fair, it's a very varied bunch of careers that shows that Gadget is inept at everything he does, but he's always passionate.
Welcome to Mayor Wilson's Fundraiser-O-Rama.
Oh.
It's quite the coincidence that these glitches are happening just as G2 is being introduced to the public, a futuristic robot who is actually competent at her job, making Gadget realize that he's maybe behind the times.
I noticed that you didn't say Go-Go Gadget.
Oh, that's just one of the many improvements I've made to G2.0.
Like it?
I really like that Gadget doesn't immediately resent G2 out of bitter jealousy, because it helps us to better sympathize with his struggle to keep up with her. They could have gone with the envious, insecure man trope, but they decided on a much more wholesome angle. Gadget is genuinely enamored by G2's skills, and actively wants to be a partner in crime fighting. Plus, he's not exactly subtle about his crush on her.
Oh, Inspector, you're everything I ever wanted in a crime fighter.
While Gadget is a man of emotion who approaches his job with passion, G2 isn't advanced enough to express any feelings yet, so we get this stark contrast between a hardened professional and an adorable man-child. Sure, that's the formula for a lot of buddy cop movies, but that cliche sings another tune when said buddies are bots of different generations.
I always wanted a partner. And when we interrogate criminals, I'll play good Gadget and you can play bad Gadget.
I don't think so.
I can't say that there's any particularly deep chemistry between French Stewart and G2's Elaine Hendricks, especially when Elaine has to play the role constantly deadpan, but there's a cute charm to the idea of this pairing. I especially like how Gadget's free-spirited goofiness and open heart teaches G2 to learn the value of emotion.
Thank you.
G2 only exists as a tool for the police. She's not seen as a real person, but Gadget, an android, respects her agency and sympathizes with her place in the world. Hence when the chief callously and casually announces G2's shutdown right in front of her, mind you, Gadget is the one to save her, because he sees her as a person who can develop feelings of her own. Then, when G2 and Gadget finally team up in the finale, G2 offers to swap chips with him, which is actually quite romantic. I mean, they're practically giving each other parts of themselves. G2 gets to inherit Gadget's glitchy flaws, which helps her to become more imperfect, more human, and develop a stronger personality.
Oh well, I guess when you have lemons, make lemonade.
While Gadget uses his new competent technology to be a more skilled inspector, all while being motivated by his need to save his niece from Claw. Without ever sacrificing his trademark goofy personality. So what about the villainous Claw? Is he an improvement? Well, to be honest, he's the biggest glow up out of everything in this sequel. True to the cartoon, the film tries its very best to hide his face, to give him an ominous mystery. It's quite impressive how much the movie commits to keeping his face in the shadows or off camera. He's also been given this Mafia Don revamp that totally fits the original character way better than Rupert Everett's campy yuppie. Actor Tony Martin might never get a face reveal, but he really sinks his teeth into this role, having fun as an evil, shady gangster and suavely owning Claw's sleek fashion sense.
You nitwits! Once we've robbed the Federal Reserve, we can buy hundreds of these baubles with my secret weapon.
However, I did notice that jokes were rarely at the expense of Claw, and Claw's winning streak does kind of hinder a lot of comedy potential. Most of the time, Claw is the one humiliating Gadget, while in the cartoon, Gadget's incompetence accidentally thwarting a bad-tempered Claw inspires a chunk of the humor in the show. Which makes sense when Claw is meant to be the straight guy to Gadget's buffoonery. Only the bubblegum scene, which doesn't happen until the end of the film, comes the closest to matching the classic cartoon's Claw and Gadget rivalry shtick.
You may have won this round, but I'll get you next time, Gadget!
Which brings me on to the sequel's hit or miss comedy. Firstly, I do commend the film's humor for being way more appropriate for the target audience. The first film was so strangely horny that it was like the writers wanted to make an R-rated movie instead. Inspector Gadget 2 totally embraces being a kid's movie. Every joke is silly and goofy enough to get big laughs out of 8-year-olds. They're the kind of gags you'd find in a Saturday morning cartoon.
Wowzers! That's gotta hurt.
Plus, all the actors chew the scenery and know that children are watching them. No one seems embarrassed to be in this film. They all know what they signed up for and put their hearts into entertaining under 10s.
Go, Gadget, eject!
He's on the roof!
However, I can't exactly call this movie's humor inspired. It's very creatively stunted by its juvenile tone, and doesn't get that imaginative. I mainly remember a weird over-dependence on messy and splatter-centric gags. Heck, the film is so obsessed with this kind of gross humor that it quickly becomes stale and predictable.
Stop, Gadget, stop, Peter! It's okay!
On a positive note though, I'm glad that the police chief actually gets to work with Gadget in this sequel, because we can now go all out on the annoying robot and authoritative chief comedy dynamic.
Gadget! You put my mother in jail for drag racing?
And driving without a license.
An aspect that the first movie actively avoided doing.
You're not a real police inspector. You are not a real policeman. You are just a publicity stunt.
While the first Inspector Gadget used CGI effects sparingly, this sequel goes ham on its computer wizardry. Much like the comedy, it's very uneven. Some shots are acceptable, I guess. A few effects are fine. But there's a couple uncanny valley bits, and whenever the film gets a bit too ambitious, yeah, you can start to notice the CGI's age. However, I have to give it to the filmmakers for finding a wide array of uses for the CGI. Computer animation wasn't a gimmick to them, it was a creative opportunity. The visual effects team have a decent list of work to do, and kudos to their commitment despite their primitive limitations. The abundance of computer magic made me naively assume that practical effects were rarely used. However, after doing some digging, I was surprised to learn how many tricks were actually achieved through physical technology. Sure, the absence of Stan Winston does mean that we get less on-set effects this time, and even the Gadgetmobile's face is now CGI animated, but that just made me appreciate any practical work or animatronics even more. Just watch the behind the scenes making of and you'll see what I mean. Oh, and Tony Martin carries the iconic claw animatronic way better than Rupert Everett. It doesn't look like the animatronic is compensating for our villain, but rather adding to an already intimidating character. To conclude, Inspector Gadget 2 is the Gadget movie that fans always crave for, a film that actually wants to be like the cartoon, and understands the appeal of Gadget's legacy. Are there a few bugs and glitches here and there? Totally, and I pointed them out myself. But as imperfect as it is in areas, not a single cell in my body is convinced that the filmmakers didn't care. There was very obvious passion behind any flawed execution, and overall it puts the first film to shame. I've been Jambriki, feel free to like and subscribe. Cheerio folks.